You're listening to Cinema IRL, the podcast that throws you into the movie and asks the question, what would you do? Need a book on how to fly? You won't find that on Amazon. You need to look to a place a little bit darker. Amber and Scott discuss the secret art of human flight. Life advice: if your dark web book comes hand-delivered by the author, you should be concerned. And now, Cinema IRL.
I wish I could switch places for just one day.
If you find yourself in the unique position, what would you do?
Put yourself in my shoes.
How do we handle this?
What would you do?
What would you do?
How do you want to handle this?
What would you do? Put yourself in my position.
What would you do?
Now it's your turn.
Are you ready to take flight?
No, actually, I'm not.
Okay, well, that is the topic of today's episode, the secret art of human flight. A widower attempts to overcome his grief by embarking on an absurd but personal journey with an eccentric guru who claims to have unlocked the power to fly.
Yeah, this movie gave me a lot of feels.
Yeah, it was very unique, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did enjoy the movie. It gave me a lot of feels, and it brought up a lot of the, question that we like to ask on this show a lot.
What would you do?
What would you do?
Yeah. So the main character he recently lost his wife, and they were partners in writing children's books. And he starts upon this journey as he's grieving and goes to the dark web and finds someone who sells him this very strange book and then shows up on his doorstep with the intent of teaching him how to fly, not with a plane, but just with his body.
Well, in fairness, if you're going to buy a book for $5,400, it probably should come with some bonuses, like, the guy who wrote it showing up at your door and being your personal sensei.
Yes, the personal trainer touch was unexpected, but very helpful.
Yeah.
So this had a lot of what would you do. So what would you do if your spouse died, and how would you handle that grief?
That is, without a shadow of a doubt, far and away my number one greatest fear on this planet. Like, there is nothing I wouldn't do to avoid being in that position.
Yeah, it was an interesting film to see his journey, because as he's going through this, he's also a suspect somewhat from the local detective who thinks there might be some foul play when really we don't have any reason to believe that. But he's also dealing with the stress of that.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but
it's
anaphylactic shock, but I suppose they could say that he gave her something that would cause that, but
Sure. And the other part of this film that is interesting as well is the friend of the wife who passed away shows up with a pie and ends up talking to him about what she did to cope when her husband died. And she says, find something. It can be some insane activity, but find something and see it through. And it kind of gives him the rah, go get him with the journey he's already started with the learning how to fly.
Yeah, he had jumped off that journey and she showed up and put him right back on it. So, depending on how the director viewed it, she might have killed him. I don't know. I don't know how those last few seconds went.
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't see him dying. Spoilers, again, if you're interested in this film, please put us on pause. Go watch the film right now and then come back and resume, because at the end, he does fly.
Well, he certainly attempts to fly.
What do you mean he attempts to fly? He's flying. And it wasn't in his mind, because the friend looked up and saw him, and everyone stood outside their houses and looked up and saw him. So it was real.
Well, that's what he saw.
Oh, you're implying that maybe he died and he just imagined that after death?
It's entirely possible. Also there were rainbows shooting out of things. So, take or leave that for what it's worth.
I didn't see it as rainbows. I saw it as being able to see things in a different way when you're up that high. And it was little light things around, like the traffic lanes and things like that.
He might have actually been up that high. He might have been way high. I don't know.
So what would you do in that circumstance? So your spouse passes away and you are stuck in grief, and there's the possibility of a detective wanting to prosecute you in connection to your wife's death, and you're just trying to hold it together.
I mean, I'd look at the detective and I'd say, listen, I understand you have a job to do. I had nothing to do with this. Understand internally, I fucking hate you for even remotely putting me through this. So whatever you have to do to get me off the suspect list, let's get it done ASAP, because I can't grieve while I've got a detective crawling up my ass.
Yeah, and ironically, the detective mostly left him alone on this journey, aside from showing up when he got some complaints from neighbors about him sleeping up on the roof and whatnot, which was part of this book, this very old-looking book that the guru created that was called The Secret Art of Human Flight.
Yeah, he had to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
I mean,
It kind of goes back to the concept of blind faith. If someone promises you an outcome, do you have blind faith in getting that outcome? And it's an interesting concept because when you're in a state of grief, you're probably more apt to pursue something that will get you out of that grief. And that's what the friend said is basically a distraction to really fully embed yourself in some sort of distraction. And that's what the learning how to fly was for him.
I get that. Just as a side note, I kind of want to know exactly what was in her magic potion.
Well, she told us it was
Well, I
Red
know,
Bull and chocolate milk and
like if I could find a way of stomaching everything that was there, that would be a fun thing to try.
So her magic potion, for folks who don't know what Scott's talking about, is when she was going through grief, she basically took every liquid in her kitchen, poured it in a bottle, and woke up somewhere the next day with no real memory of what had happened. And she proceeded to do that for a month. And that was her way of escaping and grieving for the course of a month. And every morning she'd wake up in a stranger's bed or in the bathroom at the pharmacy or in the woods. And the need for a distraction when you're going through grief, I think, is very real because you want to feel anything different than what you're feeling. You want to be anywhere different than where you are. And the need for escape, I think, really is powerful. So if this diversion helped him process, not even process the grief, but really just be a distraction from it, I actually really completely get that.
I do as well. I mean, sometimes when you're in that situation, you need a way of completely escaping from reality. I feel like the changes were a little sweeping. Like everything he had to do to get to that point, like
such as
like taking all of your chairs in the house and getting rid of them.
Yes, that was part of chapter 1 of the book, is to
prepare your home.
Yes.
He actually turned one of his rooms into like
the sky.
A sky with clouds. I mean, that
Yeah,
was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, actually, I enjoyed that as well. He painted it sky blue and then created these clouds that were hanging from the ceiling. I actually really kind of want a cloud room now. I thought that was neat.
Yeah, that was actually pretty interesting.
And to simulate just the thoughts of being up in the clouds, and that was part of the reason why he was told to sleep up on the roof to be closer to the sky because he would be flying soon. And if someone came to you in a moment with the secret of human flight, it's interesting because I think some people might indulge that up to the point where it actually came of jumping off a mountain or a cliff or a building, because at that point, you want to talk about blind faith, that's about as blind as you can get.
Yeah, because unfortunately, this is where Logical Scott comes into play. And Logical Scott understands the aerodynamics or lack thereof that comes with being a human being. Like, we are not built for flight. And it doesn't matter if you get rid of all the chairs in your house. It doesn't matter if you go on a 1 week vegetable only and then 1 week meat only diet. It doesn't matter if you do a lot of mushrooms. It doesn't matter if you face your greatest fears and do breathing exercises. None of these things are going to make it so that if I jump off a cliff.
He also had to study birds and only communicate like a bird.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that too.
That could help.
No, it wouldn't. Would not help at all.
That was me being a pigeon.
I mean, what would you do? I mean, the truth is I think he actually did indulge it as a suicide thing.
And he was okay with that. He said, if best case scenario, I fly. Worst case scenario, I'm reunited with Sarah, the love of my life. So he was content with whatever way things panned out.
Yeah, but I think he drove himself a little into madness to get there. Like, he wanted to believe so badly that the idea of reality just wasn't relevant to him anymore.
But that said, at one stage, he is actually committed somewhere. And he somehow gets out of the grounds where they're out in the yard and is on the other side of the fence. So how did that happen if he didn't fly?
I'm going to say special effects and movie editing.
But we didn't see. We saw him running through the yard, and then we saw him on a car on the other side of the fence.
Yeah,
so
no,
if he couldn't fly, how did that happen?
The supposition is that he flew.
He flew.
So, and that's why I say I don't know for sure at the end. It is entirely possible that he did fly, that there was this little supernatural element at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I'm going to think that Ben flew. I believe that sonic boom of him being thrust into the air, and I want to believe that Ben flew, and I don't know what happens after that. That's where the movie ended. But from a what would you do perspective, I think if someone offered you a diversion from your grief, I think that would be a somewhat easy thing to say yes to if you could be open-minded to the idea of just doing something completely not you. And Ben was a somewhat conservative guy, at least I think that's the impression I got from some of the flashbacks of his relationship with his wife, Sarah. So the idea of, gee, I'm going to learn how to fly, it seemed way beyond what his normal character might be.
Yeah, listen, if coming into the IRL aspect of cinema IRL, if the secret of human flight involves a plane and a parachute, and that's not something I would normally do, I'd indulge that because, physics and aerodynamics.
Well, that's
and
dropping more than flying.
Well, ish. Or if it involves, say, a jetpack, I would indulge something like that. But in my brain, I know if there's nothing tied to me and I jump off a cliff,
yeah.
I'm falling until I hit the bottom. And
Well, and that's what I said, is you have blind faith until you're actually standing on the edge of something. And
Yeah,
at that point, it's a different ballgame.
yeah, and that's blind faith, but with some real life intelligence.
And the reality is certainly not to speak for everyone because grief manifests itself in many different ways. But you're probably more open to something that might give you some relief. Not saying that that's suicide, and that's not at all what I'm implying, but just indulging ideas and thoughts and actions that might be out of character just to get you out of that feeling.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you take the general concept of taking something that's not part of who you generally are and introducing it to your life and using that as a way to escape and grieve, 100% all about that. I'm just saying it needs to conform within the laws of physics.
I think he flew.
Yeah.
I think he flew.
Again, in the movie, entirely possible he did. And I'd like to believe that as well.
Yeah.
But again, I know I'm the downer here introducing the IRL part of the cinema IRL. But in real life, if somebody says all of that, I'm going to be like, you're effing crazy. No, why don't you take up knitting or,
this would be
spelunking or something that's not necessarily going to instantly kill you during your final exam.
This would be a good time for a legal disclaimer. In Cinema IRL in no way endorses you jumping off of anything with the idea that you can fly.
Yeah, don't do it. There's no endorsing or not endorsing. Don't do it.
Don't do it. But for the purposes of the film, I'd like to think you did.
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release 2 to 3 episodes weekly, so we'll have new content regularly. Until next time.